You there, the woman who sleeps alone, who lies awake wondering why the silence feels so heavy. This message is for you. That ache in your chest, that quiet tear no one sees, it's not loneliness, it's divine preparation. What you thought was isolation is actually God's hidden training ground, where He molds warriors in the stillness of the night. You've been asking, why me? Why does everyone else seem to move forward while your heart waits in the quiet? Listen closely, because heaven has an answer. You were never forgotten. You were chosen. Chosen not because you were weaker, but because your soul carries something too sacred to be mishandled by the ordinary. While others chase noise, you are learning to hear God in the whisper. You, beloved, are not alone. You are set apart. Every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, every moment you felt invisible, He saw it all, and He is closer than ever. God uses solitude to awaken your strength, to refine your heart, to prepare you for a season only you can carry. Before we go deeper, take a moment, comment 77777 below if you feel this message stirring your spirit. That number is a sign that you're ready to align with the promise God placed over your life. Like, share, and subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to walk together with women who understand this sacred calling. To every soul watching, thank you for being part of this family. Your prayers, your super thanks, your silent support, they are felt, they matter, they build this community of faith. Remember, your season of being alone is not punishment, it is the womb of your purpose. Now, take a deep breath. Feel His presence right where you are, because tonight, God is speaking directly to your heart. The question is, will you finally believe that your silence has always been His way of speaking to you? God's chosen ones, how God uses the woman who sleeps alone. There comes a moment, subtle yet piercing, when a woman begins to feel out of place, not because she has strayed, but because she has chosen not to. You know that feeling, don't you? That quiet ache of being misunderstood for walking in alignment with God when the world seems to reward rebellion. It's not that you've done anything wrong, it's that your righteousness exposes what others have tried to bury. Your stillness stirs their noise, your contentment unsettles their confusion. You have become a mirror in which the world sees its own distortion. And this is where the loneliness begins, not the loneliness of being unloved, but of being set apart. Have you noticed how quickly the world grows uncomfortable with a woman who refuses to beg for validation, who walks with quiet confidence, who prays more than she posts, who chooses depth over drama? They don't understand that you are not waiting for attention, you are waiting for purpose. When you walk in faith, you walk against the current. It's no wonder the world looks at you sideways. You hear the same tired questions over and over. Why are you still single? Don't you think it's time? Maybe you're too demanding. What they can't comprehend is that your solitude isn't an absence, it's an altar. The nights you spend alone are not empty, they are sacred. In those quiet hours, heaven draws closer. The room that feels silent to others is, to you, alive with divine conversation. It was always this way for the chosen ones. Sarah before her promise, Ruth before her redemption, Mary before her revelation. Each woman had a season of divine solitude, misunderstood by others yet deeply known by God. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. That's what He whispers to you when the world questions your pace. Be still, because stillness in the spirit is not stagnation. It is strength gathering in silence. There's a sacred paradox hidden in your story. The world calls it loneliness, but heaven calls it preparation. The bed you sleep in alone has become your secret place of intercession, your training ground for spiritual strength. When your head rests on the pillow and no one's arms surround you, it is God who covers you. For He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. Psalm 91:11. You are not unguarded, you are divinely watched. Sometimes you wonder, why does my path look so different? Why does obedience feel so isolating? Why does it seem like everyone else is being celebrated while I'm being hidden? But don't you see? The hiding is holy. God often hides his treasures before he reveals them. Michelangelo once said that every block of marble contains a sculpture, and his job was only to chip away the excess. That's what your solitude is, divine chiseling. Every quiet night, every unanswered question, every longing moment is God shaping the woman beneath the surface, preparing her for a glory too great for premature unveiling. The truth is, not everyone can understand what it means to be used by God while walking through solitude. The world glamorizes companionship, but heaven honors consecration. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91:1. You dwell there not by accident, but by assignment. Loneliness becomes unbearable only when we forget its purpose. You are not in this season to prove that you can endure, you are here to receive. God uses your quiet to refine your discernment. He teaches you to hear his whisper so clearly that when the world's noise returns, you won't lose focus. Solitude, then, is not the absence of love. It is the cultivation of spiritual intimacy. Maybe the question isn't, why am I alone? But what is God saying to me alone? What hidden revelation is he waiting to unfold in the stillness that no crowd could ever witness? Sometimes he must remove every other voice so that yours and his can finally align in harmony. Art history reminds us that Caravaggio, the painter of shadows, believed darkness was not the enemy of light but its teacher. He said light gains its power from contrast. That's you, woman of God. Your quiet shadows are revealing the radiance that can only be seen in divine timing. And science confirms what faith already knows: pressure transforms. Just as coal becomes diamond under intense compression, the weight of waiting is producing something eternal in you. Your tears, your discipline, your restraint, these are not signs of weakness. They are the architecture of heaven being built within your soul. In your silence, heaven listens. In your stillness, the Spirit speaks. In your solitude, the unseen is taking shape. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. And yet, even knowing this, there are nights when your heart aches. There are mornings when the bed feels too big, when the quiet feels too loud. You are human, after all. You crave touch, laughter, closeness. But don't mistake longing for lack. Your desire for love is not a flaw. It is the echo of the divine image within you, for God himself is love. And in time, he will weave your story with another if it aligns with your purpose. Until then, your aloneness is not punishment, it is partnership with him. One day, you will look back on this season and realize it was never empty. It was overflowing with strength, revelation, and divine intimacy. You'll see how God used your quiet nights to build resilience, how he used your tears to baptize your faith, how he turned what looked like isolation into the birthplace of your calling. Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. Psalm 126:5. So, keep walking, even if your steps echo through silence. Keep trusting, even when your prayers return in whispers. Heaven is nearer than you think. And when the world asks, why are you alone? You'll smile softly and say, because God is still writing. They may call you names old maid, too picky, too spiritual, too much, because the world always mocks what it cannot understand. But what they don't see is that your story is not paused. It's being crafted. You are not being forgotten. You are being formed. God is not withholding. He is weaving. Every unseen hour, every quiet night, every whispered prayer has become the fabric of something eternal. You are not being left aside. You have been set apart. It is easy for people to judge what they cannot discern, They look at your calm and call it stagnation. They mistake your boundaries for pride. They see your solitude and call it emptiness. But how can they recognize divine work when they only measure in worldly timelines? How can they see the construction of the soul when all they care for are the visible structures of success? What they don't realize is that while they're rushing to be seen, you are learning to see clearly. While they chase after love to fill their loneliness, you are being filled by love himself. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Stillness is your training ground, your holy apprenticeship in discernment and devotion. Yes, it feels like swimming against the tide. The current of culture pushes hard, telling you that your worth is in your relationship status, your beauty, your display of affection. Yet here you are, refusing to perform, choosing authenticity over approval. You have decided that peace is greater than popularity. And though it may isolate you now, it is that very choice that sanctifies you later. The world celebrates noise, but God whispers in silence. The world rewards exposure, but God anoints in secret. Have you noticed how those who rush ahead often burn out, while those who wait on God glow quietly for decades? The furnace of solitude is not punishment, it's refinement. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Job 23:10. And that's what's happening to you. You're not losing time, you're gaining purity. Your waiting is not wasted. It's the workshop of heaven, where divine hands sculpt character, patience, and depth that cannot be imitated. Every prayer you've whispered through tears becomes a stroke in the masterpiece he's painting within you. And while others decorate their lives with filters, you are being filled with fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that defines. The sculptor Rodin once said that art is not what you add, but what you take away. God is doing the same with you. He's not making you heavier with worldly ornaments. He's stripping away everything false, carving out distractions, removing dependence on others, so that what remains is essence, pure, radiant, eternal. You may not see the progress day by day, but heaven does. Angels move quietly around you when you pray. The atmosphere shifts when you worship in solitude. In the stillness, your heart is becoming an altar. The walls of your room hear prayers that will one day echo across generations. You're not behind. You're being built for something that will outlast you. Sometimes you wonder, how long will this shaping last? How many nights must I endure before I see the promise? But shaping takes time. Even stars require centuries to shine their full light. When God shapes you, he doesn't rush, because he's creating something eternal. The world may measure progress in moments. Heaven measures it in obedience. As a musician tunes her instrument before the concert, your life is being tuned to divine frequency. Every moment of waiting is tension being aligned into harmony. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." God is using your questions to deepen your faith, to transform uncertainty into intimacy. It's okay if you don't fit into their timeline. You were never meant to. Your life follows a rhythm that others can't hear. They dance to applause. You move to an unseen symphony. And though you may walk through nights of doubt, know this: weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 30:5. Your morning will come. When you choose righteousness over attention, people might distance themselves. When you guard your heart instead of giving it away cheaply, some will call you cold. But God calls you his. You have become the keeper of sacred fire, a woman who holds the mystery of divine timing in her hands. And that's why you are misunderstood. Light always confuses those who have grown comfortable in shadows. In psychology, there is something called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort people feel when they encounter a truth that challenges their illusions. You, chosen one, are that truth. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your faith exposes their fear. Your standards remind them of the ones they lowered. That's why they question you. That's why they gossip. But every time they speak, heaven defends. So don't dim your flame, don't soften your strength, don't apologize for your sanctity. The woman who sleeps alone tonight may one day awaken the world with her voice, her vision, her victory. Because solitude doesn't silence you, it sanctifies you. It trains your spirit to discern God's whisper in a world addicted to noise. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. Proverbs 31-25. And one day, those who mocked will marvel. They'll see that the woman they called too demanding was simply too devoted to settle. They'll see that while they ran in circles, you were walking straight toward destiny. You are not behind, you are ahead of your time, because while others chased approval, you chose alignment. You are the woman who sleeps alone, not in despair, but in destiny. Not because you are unloved, but because you are loved enough to be prepared. And when God finally releases what He's been shaping in you, it will carry the fragrance of every tear, every prayer, every lonely night that forged you into gold. So, hold your peace, stay your course. The world may misunderstand you now, but heaven applauds you always. Choose solitude with peace over company with emptiness, because peace, though quiet, is never hollow. It carries the echo of divine presence, the pulse of heaven's heartbeat. The world teaches you to fill every silence, to reach for someone, anyone, just to quiet the ache of being alone. But you, chosen one, have learned the sacred art of stillness. You've discovered that true strength is not found in constant companionship, but in the courage to remain with yourself and with God when no one else stays. That, my friend, is spiritual power in its purest form. Have you ever realized how brave you are? Truly, how courageous it is to resist the temptation to settle for a counterfeit connection just to silence your loneliness. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid the sound of their own soul, but you have listened to it. You have faced the echo of your own heart and refused to run. That is not a weakness, that is the mark of the chosen, those who would rather walk in truth than live in illusion. Better to live on the corner of a roof than share a house with a quarrelsome companion. Proverbs 21-9. You have refused shortcuts that promised comfort but delivered compromise. You've stood in moments when your hands were empty and still lifted them in prayer. That is why your light shines differently. It's not the sparkle of vanity, it's the glow of endurance. The quiet radiance of someone who has walked through shadow and kept their faith intact. The shine of one who has cried herself to sleep and still whispered, "Lord, I trust you." Your glow confuses those who have never known darkness. They think light is something bought, posted, but you know it is born. It is born in long nights of uncertainty where faith becomes your only flame. It is born when your tears fall onto the same floor where your knees bend in prayer. It is born when you choose reverence over resentment. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1-5. There is something extraordinary about a woman who doesn't rush to fill her loneliness. She becomes a sanctuary. Her solitude turns into a temple where God dwells freely. The silence that once frightened her becomes the space where His whisper grows unmistakable. Have you noticed how your intuition has sharpened lately? How do you sense things before they happen? How peace warns you? How stillness teaches you? That's not coincidence, it's calibration. Your spirit has been tuned to a higher frequency because you have made space for God to speak. When you choose solitude with peace, you choose alignment over distraction. You begin to attract what matches your spiritual vibration. People of chaos will drift away not because you reject them, but because peace no longer negotiates with noise. You start to understand that loneliness is not your enemy, distortion is. And every time you choose stillness over settling, you are telling heaven, "I'm ready for real." This is what spiritual maturity looks like, the ability to be whole without being surrounded, to find joy without external applause. It's the quiet defiance of a woman who refuses to rush the process. And yes, it takes courage, because every advertisement, every voice, every expectation tells you that happiness must be shared to be real. Yet here you are, sitting in your room, feeling the hum of God's presence, realizing that fullness doesn't require witnesses. The composer Arvo Pärt once said, "Silence is the pause in music that gives meaning to the sound." That's you. Your silence is not the absence of song, it's the sacred rest that prepares for the melody to begin. Heaven is composing something through your waiting. Every quiet day is a note, every prayer a chord, every surrender a symphony. And yet, there are moments when the silence aches, when you wonder, will anyone ever see me the way God does? Will anyone understand the depths I've walked through? Will anyone match the rhythm of my soul? Those are not weak questions. They are holy ones. They come from the part of you that still believes in love, not the fleeting kind, but the divine reflection kind. God placed that longing there, not to torment you, but to teach you discernment. The longer you walk alone, the more clearly you learn to distinguish what is divine from what is merely distracting. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Isaiah 40-31. You are in that renewal now. Every act of restraint, every no whispered to temptation, every yes whispered to faith, builds invisible wings on your back. And when the right moment comes, when God opens the door, you won't crawl, you will soar. There's a quiet power that grows in you through waiting. It's the kind that cannot be faked. You walk differently. You speak with calm authority. You carry grace in your eyes. Because you've learned to be filled by the Spirit, not by the spotlight. In psychology, this is called self-regulation. But in the Spirit, it's something greater. It's divine composure. The ability to remain centered even when everything around you shifts. Every trial, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer has built that strength. You have become, without realizing it, the kind of woman who intimidates darkness. When you walk into a room, chaos notices, because peace has presence and yours commands attention. So don't envy the ones who seem surrounded. Don't measure your journey by the noise of the crowd. Remember, God often hides his strongest warriors in quiet places. He builds queens in waiting before he crowns them on purpose. Your peace is your proof that you are being prepared, not forgotten. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I will hope in him. Lamentations 3:24. That's your anthem, contentment in the waiting, joy in the stillness, light in the unseen. You are not merely surviving your solitude, you are sanctifying it. Every night you choose prayer over panic, worship over worry, peace over panic. Heaven writes it down. The light of your perseverance will one day guide others out of their own darkness. And when the time comes, you will not just meet someone, you will recognize them, because divine love can only meet you at the frequency of divine peace. Until then, rest in your sacred solitude. You are not incomplete. You are in process, a masterpiece in progress, glowing softly in the quiet workshop of God. Not everyone can bear your light. That's why your presence unsettles them. It's not that there's something wrong with you, it's that there's something too right about you. God has wrapped you in a quiet radiance, a spiritual fragrance that cannot be imitated. You carry a weight that cannot be seen, but it can be felt long before you even speak. Some people feel it as comfort, others as conviction. Because when a woman is truly covered in God's glory, even her silence becomes a sermon. You've felt it, haven't you? Those moments when you enter a room and the atmosphere shifts not because of what you wear or say, but because heaven enters with you. People can't name it, but they feel it. It's in your stillness, your composure, your grace under pressure. It's in the way your eyes see what others overlook. That's not coincidence, that's presence. Divine presence carried through the vessel of your being. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 60:1. But not everyone can stand under the weight of glory. Some recoil from it, not because you did anything, but because light naturally exposes what hides in the dark. Your peace disturbs their unrest. Your purity confronts their compromise. Your stillness reveals their noise, and though you never meant to challenge anyone, the anointing on your life has become a mirror they can't avoid. There are people who will talk about you simply because they can't touch you. Others will misunderstand your quietness as arrogance, your boundaries as rejection, your contentment as pride. But you must remember, the greater the glory, the greater the misunderstanding. Even Christ himself was misunderstood, accused of pride, rebellion, madness. And yet he stood in silence, wrapped in the authority of heaven. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. Isaiah 53:7. You walk in that same lineage of holy restraint, strength that doesn't need to prove itself, power that doesn't need to announce itself. When you are covered by God, even your silence becomes warfare. Demons recognize what people deny. When you walk into a place and the atmosphere changes, it's not your imagination, it's spiritual resonance. The frequency of heaven meets the dissonance of the world, and the vibration must shift. Physics calls this resonant frequency. When one vibration is so powerful, it forces everything around it to align or break. That's what happens when you show up carrying God's light. Those who carry truth naturally disturb false harmony. The counterfeit trembles in the presence of authenticity. So don't apologize for the way people react to you. You are not intimidating, their illusions are fragile. Your life has become a sermon without a pulpit. Your discipline preaches louder than words. Your purity convicts more deeply than argument. And your peace testifies more powerfully than any speech could. This is what it means to be used by God while appearing ordinary. You've become the living proof that holiness still has a pulse in a chaotic world. But it's not always easy, is it? There are days when this weight feels heavy, when you wonder, why does my presence bother people? Why do I feel isolated in rooms where everyone seems connected? Why does favor feel like loneliness? These are sacred questions, born from a heart refined by fire. They are not signs of weakness, they are evidence that you are carrying something precious. Oil always separates from water. Glory always sets apart. You are not being excluded, you are being preserved. Some relationships are fading not because you're difficult, but because you're different now. The vibration of your spirit has changed. Heaven is raising your frequency, and not everyone can breathe at higher altitudes. Birds of prey can't survive where eagles soar. You've outgrown certain atmospheres. And though part of you still grieves their loss, another part of you knows peace is the price of purpose. Artists have always understood this tension. The sculptor Camille Claudel once said, "To be a great artist is to live alone with fire." You too live with that inner fire, not to create marble or bronze, but to shape a life that reflects divine beauty. You're not cold, you're concentrated, you're not distant, you're deeply aligned. In moments when loneliness whispers, remember that even Jesus withdrew to desolate places to pray. Solitude was his sanctuary, not his punishment. And every time he returned, he came back with greater authority. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Luke 5:16. You're in that same sacred pattern: retreat, refine, return. The world sees withdrawal. God sees strategy. Your presence has become like incense, invisible yet undeniable, delicate yet potent. It lingers long after you leave. That's what divine anointing does. When you walk into a space, heaven testifies through you. When you speak, your words carry the weight of prayer. When you choose kindness over gossip, strength over reaction, silence over argument, that's not timidity, that's training. And make no mistake, the world may not understand your composure, but it needs it. Your calm becomes a refuge for the anxious. Your faith becomes a pattern for the fearful. Your integrity becomes proof that holiness still breathes among us. You don't have to raise your voice, your presence already does. The Lord will make you the head, not the tail. You shall be above only, and not beneath. Deuteronomy 28:13. Every time you walk in a room and the air feels different, remember, it's not about ego, It's evidence. Evidence that the unseen realm recognizes what heaven has marked. You are not merely a woman who sleeps alone. You are the vessel God chose to carry his stillness into noisy spaces. The peace you protect is not just for you. It's the peace others will borrow when their storms rage. So don't shrink, don't soften, don't apologize for the weight you carry. You were not meant to blend in. You were meant to shift atmospheres. Let your silence keep speaking. Let your light keep unsettling. You are God's living sanctuary, and everywhere you go, the air itself remembers him. You don't always understand why people react to you the way they do, why some suddenly grow distant, why others seem uneasy in your presence without reason. But what you're sensing isn't rejection, it's recognition. Your spirit is being perceived, even by those who can't name what they're feeling. The light you carry unsettles darkness not because it tries to, but because that is its nature. Light reveals. Light confronts. Light heals. And in the process, it exposes everything that was hiding in shadow. This is the price of carrying divine illumination, walking roads few dare to tread, bearing misunderstanding like a crown, learning how to keep shining when the world prefers shadows. You, chosen one, have been entrusted with a glow that costs. People see the effect but not the endurance. They see the peace but not the pressure. They see the wisdom but not the weeping. But you know it, that the path of the illuminated is never crowded. Enter through the narrow gate, Jesus said, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Matthew 7:13. You have chosen the narrow path, the one where the soul grows louder than the noise, where silence becomes revelation. Every misunderstanding, every judgment, every season of being ignored, it's not punishment, it's purification. You're being refined, separated, consecrated. Because whoever carries true light will always disturb counterfeit comfort. Wherever light walks, darkness trembles. When you start to glow from the inside out, some people will leave not because you did something wrong, but because your presence reminds them of who they've stopped trying to be. And yet, that's part of your calling. The calling of the luminous soul is not to be loved by everyone, but to awaken those ready to see. The painter Caravaggio, known for capturing divine contrast through light and shadow, once said that true art lives in tension between illumination and darkness. Your life is that living artwork light that was not meant to erase darkness, but to define it. There's something many forget. God's silence is not absence, it's a strategy. He hides not to punish, but to prepare. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Silence is heaven's way of sculpting hearing, of fine-tuning your soul to perceive what noise would drown out. Have you ever wondered why God seems quiet just when your heart burns most urgently for an answer? Why do the heavens close when you cry out the loudest? It's not rejection, it's recalibration. In those moments of divine quiet, God is rearranging the architecture of your heart so it can hold revelation without breaking. He's teaching you to find him not in thunder, not in spectacle, but in the gentle whisper Elijah heard after the storm. And after the fire came a gentle whisper, 1 Kings 19:12. God's silence is the masterclass of faith. It is where trust becomes truth. It's where you learn that absence is only apparent and that every unanswered prayer is actually an answered preparation. You're not being ignored. You're being instructed in a language of stillness only the chosen can understand. But yes, it's not easy, is it? There are nights when you kneel in prayer and heaven seems still as stone, when tears fall and no voice answers back, when loneliness echoes louder than faith. In those moments, your mind wrestles. Did I hear him wrong? Did he forget me? Am I really chosen, or am I just waiting for nothing? These are sacred questions, the same ones saints, prophets, and poets have whispered for centuries. The mystic Teresa of Avila once wrote that God walks among the pots and pans, meaning he hides in the ordinary. When you think nothing is happening, everything is being rearranged. The silence you feel now will one day become the sound of doors opening you didn't know existed. And remember this, even Jesus experienced silence in the Garden of Gethsemane. He prayed until his sweat became blood, yet heaven was quiet, not because the Father turned away, but because the plan was unfolding. My God, why have you forsaken me? Matthew 27-46. The Son of God himself felt the ache of divine silence, and still he trusted it. You walk that same holy pattern, faith in the absence of feeling, trust in the void, obedience in the unseen. The woman who sleeps alone walks that road daily. Her prayers echo in rooms that seem empty but are, in truth, filled with angels recording every word. The silence between her petitions is not wasted, it's being woven into timing. Heaven never answers too early because early answers ruin readiness. What feels like delay is actually design. Sometimes God's silence is the pause before a divine crescendo. Like a symphony that holds its breath before the explosion of sound, your life is in that sacred rest, the moment before everything changes. Can you feel it? The tension between what was and what's about to be. That is heaven tuning your soul for its next movement. For everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. You are in the season of spiritual gestation, hidden, silent, unseen, but pregnant with promise. What God planted in you will not die in stillness, it's growing roots before it blooms. So, if heaven feels quiet, don't despair. You are not forgotten, you are favored. Silence is how God wraps his most sacred assignments. He hides what he values most until the time is right. Diamonds are formed in pressure, seeds grow in darkness, saints are shaped in silence. The silence you endure is the space where power matures. When it breaks, it won't be noise, it will be revelation. And you will look back on these long nights, these unanswered prayers, and whisper through tears of recognition, he was there the whole time. When you lie down at night, and all you can hear is the echo of your own thoughts, that soft hum between exhaustion and prayer, know this: heaven is not asleep. The silence that surrounds you is not empty, it is holy. You may feel as though your prayers dissolve into the ceiling, but in truth they rise like incense, carried on invisible winds toward the heart of God. There are nights when your pillow feels like an altar, your tears, the offering, your sighs, the only language you can speak. And yet, within that stillness, something sacred stirs. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them from all their troubles. Psalm 34-17. You may not see the answer forming, but heaven is in motion. When the world grows quiet, heaven grows active. God often works best in the absence of noise because silence leaves space for strategy. What you perceive as nothing is, in reality, divine construction, the soundless building of something only faith can sense. The architect of the unseen is drafting the next chapter of your life while you rest, while you doubt, while you simply breathe. And perhaps you've asked yourself, why can't I feel him tonight? Why does his voice seem so far away? If he's near, why does it feel like he's hiding? But that is where the mystery deepens. Because when God is silent, he's not ignoring you, he's instructing the invisible. The silence you're enduring is the sound of angels moving at his command. The ancient composer Johann Sebastian Bach used to leave a small note at the bottom of his unfinished pieces: Soli Deo Gloria, to the glory of God alone. It was his way of reminding himself that even when a melody paused, it still belonged to the divine. You too are in one of those sacred pauses. God hasn't stopped composing your life. He's just shifting the tempo. When your heart cries for answers, when your prayers seem to vanish into the dark, that's not abandonment. That's transformation. Because the space where nothing seems to happen is often where everything is being prepared. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Your eyes see stillness, your faith hears construction. You may not realize it, but in the quiet, your spirit is learning a new language, the dialect of trust. trust that doesn't depend on signs or timelines, trust that finds peace without proof. This is the language of the chosen, the vocabulary of women who walk by faith, not by sight. God is not waiting for your perfection, He's waiting for your permission to move in ways beyond understanding. As you lay there, whispering prayers into the night, heaven is writing chapters you haven't lived yet. Angels are dispatched, alignments are set, conversations are being prepared. What you interpret as delay is divine choreography. There's movement, subtle, quiet, exact. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. It is in this stillness that God does His finest work. Think of a seed buried in soil, motionless, unseen, seemingly lifeless. But beneath the dark, microscopic miracles are unfolding. Roots form. Life expands. What looks like dormancy is actually destiny developing. You, too, are that seed, hidden for a time, but far from forgotten. Psychologists call this incubation, the creative stage, when the mind appears still but is solving its deepest problems beneath awareness. Spiritually, it's the same. While you rest in apparent silence, God is connecting threads your mind could never weave. His plans are not delayed, they are deepening. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Jeremiah 29:11. And in those long, sleepless hours when the silence feels heavy and the future unclear, remember, not all movement makes sound. The most powerful forces in the universe, gravity, magnetism, faith, move without a whisper. So does God. His quietness is not distance, it's density. His presence is so near, it presses against your soul in ways your ears can't translate. Still, I know there are nights when faith feels fragile, when your heart aches for evidence. How long must I wait, Lord? Will this stillness ever break? Will you truly remember me? These questions are holy. Even David, the psalmist, cried, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" Psalm 13:1. But like David, you'll discover that silence is not God's. No, it's His, sacred, not yet. Imagine heaven as a grand orchestra tuning its instruments. Every string, every breath, every heartbeat must align before the first note resounds. That's where you are in the divine tuning. The silence before the symphony. The moment just before breakthrough, when heaven inhales before releasing its sound. And when that sound comes, it will not just change your life. It will confirm every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every tear that once seemed wasted. You'll see that the silence was not God's absence, but His artistry, the quiet weaving of destiny behind the curtain. So the next time you lay in bed and all you hear is your breath, remember that rhythm is holy. The same God who split the Red Sea, who whispered to Elijah, who raised Lazarus, is closer to you than your pulse. The quiet isn't empty, it's full of God's fingerprints. The woman who sleeps alone is never truly alone. Her bed becomes a battlefield of faith, her silence a sanctuary, her tears the ink with which heaven writes miracles. Rest, chosen one. The silence is working. Things are being organized quietly, deliberately, without your awareness. Doors you haven't seen yet are being built. Keys are being forged, and paths are being cleared. People who once stood near you, but no longer align with your destiny, are being gently moved aside. Conversations are being orchestrated, opportunities rewritten, traps dismantled before they ever reach your feet. All this is happening not with thunder, not with spectacle, but in silence, divine silence. And it all unfolds while you sleep alone. Maybe that's why He hasn't yet allowed someone new into your life, because heaven is still setting the stage. The script isn't ready for the next character to enter. The scene is still being lit, the background rearranged, the atmosphere adjusted for what's to come. You are not in a waiting room, you're on sacred ground. The story He's writing for you requires space, precision, and timing. You see, God is not a careless author. He doesn't scribble your destiny in haste. He writes with purpose, editing with mercy, aligning every comma and pause with eternity. And sometimes that means you must stand still while heaven rearranges everything around you. For still the vision awaits its appointed time, it hastens to the end, it will not lie. Habakkuk 2-3. So he keeps you safe, hidden like a priceless painting before its unveiling, because you can't display a masterpiece in a room still under construction. You can't toss a diamond into debris. A masterpiece requires order, protection, and the right frame. That's you. You are the masterpiece being refined, preserved, and positioned. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're still alone. Not forgotten, guarded, not rejected, reserved. Yet, in the quiet of the night, when your bed feels too wide and your prayers echo back unanswered, a whisper rises in your chest. Have I been forgotten? Has God gone silent? You feel the ache of invisibility, that haunting space between promise and fulfillment. But here's the truth: you are not invisible to heaven. Do you remember how Jesus slept through the storm while his disciples panicked? The silence of the Savior wasn't neglect, it was sovereignty. In the same way, God's quietness over your life isn't abandonment, it's an assurance that the storm is already under control. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Psalm 121-4. In this season, he is both architect and guardian. He's moving pieces you don't yet see, removing voices that could confuse your calling, dismantling illusions that could detour your heart. You are not being delayed, you are being divinely timed. There's a passage in Ecclesiastes that says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Ecclesiastes 3:11. Everything, including the long pauses, the lonely nights, the empty bed, the prayers that end in tears. Beauty isn't born from comfort, it's born from surrender. The Italian sculptor Michelangelo once said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved it until I set him free." That's what God is doing with you. The hammer and chisel of solitude are not punishment, they're precision tools in the hands of the divine artist. Every strike that echoes in your silence is heaven revealing your truest form. Sometimes, the pain of being set apart feels unbearable. You wonder, why can't I have what others have? Why must I always wait? Why does love seem to pass me by? But what if the waiting isn't deprivation? What if it's preparation? What if you're being trained to love from wholeness instead of hunger, to walk in peace rather than panic? Because not every relationship can survive the weight of your calling. The one who walks beside you must be chosen with the same care that heaven used when choosing you. God doesn't unite people for convenience, he unites them for purpose. That's why he's still adjusting the scene, not to torment you, but to protect you from counterfeits. And while you wait, he works. Heaven doesn't sleep just because you do. Angels don't rest just because your eyes close. He gives his beloved sleep. Psalm 127-2. That rest you sometimes mistake for stillness is actually divine synchronization. Every part of your story being aligned with grace, every delay calibrated for destiny. There is something profoundly scientific about divine timing. Physicists describe resonance as the moment when two frequencies meet in harmony, producing amplified energy. Spiritually, that's what God is waiting for, the resonance between your readiness and his purpose. When your heart beats in sync with his rhythm, doors will open, not by force but by flow. You are not late, you are being tuned. The silence, the isolation, the not yet, they are heaven's metronome, keeping you in time with eternity. And here's the sacred truth most people overlook. To be set apart is not to be set aside. The words sound similar, but their meanings are worlds apart. To be set aside means to be forgotten. To be set apart means to be protected for holy use. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people. 1 Peter 2-9. God has hidden you not because you're unworthy, but because you're unfinished. He's preserving your purity, guarding your glow, reserving your heart for the one moment when everything aligns. And when that day comes, when the door finally opens, it will not just be another chapter, it will be the fulfillment of everything you prayed for in the dark. Until then, let the silence speak. Let the solitude shape you. Let heaven finish setting the stage, because when the curtain finally rises, the world will understand what heaven already knew, that you were never waiting alone. You were being prepared, positioned, and perfected for glory. And when you finally step into that new season, you'll look back at this quiet one and whisper, "So that's why you kept me waiting." Set apart, that phrase sounds simple, almost quiet, but it carries the weight of heaven. You've been set apart for something greater, for something that doesn't spring from haste or hunger, but from promise. And God's promise never returns empty. It doesn't depend on your timeline, your worthiness, or your ability to see it coming. His promise moves through eternity like a current, steady, unseen, unstoppable. Yet every divine promise begins in the unseen realm. It starts in silence, in the hidden corners of your days, on mornings that feel ordinary, in evenings when your prayers seem unanswered, in the lonely pauses where you assume nothing is happening. But those are the moments heaven favors most. That's where the sacred work begins, in the backstage of your soul, far from the applause, far from the eyes of those who judge, far from the comments of those who don't understand. It's there, in that hiding place, that God molds you. He shapes you as a potter shapes clay, turning, pressing, softening, reshaping, until the form matches his design. But now, O Lord, you are our Father, we are the clay, and you are our potter. We are all the work of your hand. Isaiah 64:8. It's in this invisible place where he whispers mysteries no one else could comprehend, where he stitches the torn fabric of your soul, where he strengthens your bones and anoints your spirit with quiet endurance. And sometimes, in that process, he isolates you not as punishment, but as protection, because revelation requires privacy. The most profound growth often happens in the soil of solitude. Hiddenness is not rejection, it's incubation. He heals what you don't even know is wounded. He aligns thoughts that once scattered like leaves in the wind. He trains your spirit to hear the faint frequencies of his voice, those gentle impressions that others overlook. In your aloneness, he teaches you to see not with your eyes, but with your heart. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5-7. Have you ever wondered why some of your deepest insights arrive when no one is watching? Why do certain truths feel too intimate to share, as though they were spoken directly into your bones? That's because they are. God often reserves his purest revelations for the quiet, unseen moments when distractions fade and your heart becomes the only audience. On the outside, it might look as though nothing has changed. The same walls surround you, the same cold pillow greets you each night, the same unanswered messages wait on your phone. But within you, within the holy architecture of your soul, something has already begun, a shift, a pulse, a birth. It's like a spiritual gestation, a pregnancy of purpose. You can't see it yet, but you feel it, a heaviness in your spirit, a swelling of vision, a restlessness that says something is coming. Just as a mother doesn't rush the seed in her womb, you cannot rush what God is forming in your spirit. There is a divine rhythm at play, and your only task is to remain still enough for him to complete it. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Jeremiah 1-5. God's work in you is ancient, written before your birth, unfolding now in real time. You are not becoming something new, you are becoming what you were always meant to be. In moments when you feel forgotten, remember that even Jesus spent 30 years hidden before his 3 years of ministry. 30 years of silence for 3 years of transformation. Heaven never rushes greatness. God would rather prepare you in obscurity than expose you prematurely. And when the days stretch long, when the ache of waiting presses against your ribs, when you whisper, "How much longer, Lord?" Pause, listen, there's movement in your silence. There's life beneath your stillness. Have you noticed how a seed breaks before it blooms? how darkness protects the process before beauty emerges. So it is with your calling. In psychology, this stage could be called integration, where the unconscious and conscious begin to merge, where new understanding is born from tension. Spiritually, it's your soul synchronizing with heaven's blueprint. God is integrating your experiences, your scars, your faith, your failures, turning them into the foundation for your next season. The Renaissance painter Fra Angelico once said, "He who wishes to paint Christ must live with Christ." That's what this season is about, not doing, but becoming. You are learning to live with God, breathe with Him, sense Him in the quiet spaces where no one else dares to look. Maybe that's why this time feels so weighty, because it's sacred. The quiet is pregnant with purpose, and soon the things that felt delayed will start to move quickly. The same solitude that once felt like exile will be revealed as preparation. He who began a good work for you will bring it to completion on the day of Jesus Christ. Philippians 1-6. Every sigh, every tear, every whispered prayer is contributing to the rhythm of creation moving inside you. You're not waiting for life. Life is waiting through you. You are hosting the divine. The gestation of your purpose is God's masterpiece in progress. And one day soon, when the time comes, what was hidden will become visible. What was quiet will begin to speak. What was forming in secret will stand before the world as living testimony. Until then, breathe, rest, let Him finish writing in the unseen. For even now, heaven is moving, shaping, birthing the promise inside you. The woman who sleeps alone is not forgotten. She is becoming the evidence that God's silence is never empty and His promises never return void. God is creating something within you, quietly, steadily, like light forming beneath the surface of the earth. You can't yet see the shape of it, but you can feel the pressure, a stretching of your soul, a deepening of your heart. It's not just change, it's creation. And when the time is right, it will be impossible to hide. Because what God forms in secret, He always reveals in power. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be brought to light. Luke 8:17. There's something the world still struggles to understand, something sacred, even controversial in its quiet strength. Being alone is not the same as being empty. You can be surrounded by people and still feel hollow, and you can be alone in your room and feel full to overflowing. The woman who walks with God knows this truth intimately. She carries a fullness that cannot be defined by status, titles, or companionship. You see, there are women who don't have a husband by their side, but carry a radiance, a spiritual abundance that many couples never taste. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's what happens when your identity no longer depends on another heartbeat beside you, but on the steady pulse of God's presence within you. The world calls her lonely, but heaven calls her luminous. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It means resting in the assurance that you are already complete, that nothing and no one can add to the wholeness that comes from divine connection. And yes, people will misunderstand you. Society often measures a woman's worth by her relationships, as if love were a medal, marriage a trophy, companionship the ultimate prize. They whisper, "How can she be happy by herself?" They mistake solitude for sadness, independence for indifference. But God sees differently. He's not counting your romantic milestones. He's measuring your spiritual maturity. Have you noticed how people's questions change when you stop chasing what they expect you to want? They grow uncomfortable with your peace. They ask, "Aren't you lonely?" But what they really mean is, "How are you content without what we've been told we need?" And you could answer them this way, "Because I found something that doesn't leave when the lights go out." It's not a man's hand that holds you through the night, it's God's. "I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Matthew 28:20. It's not a voice that texts you good morning. It's the whisper of the Holy Spirit, reminding you that you are chosen, that your breath is divine evidence of purpose. Being alone with God isn't absence, it's intimacy. It's the kind of quiet that becomes conversation, the kind of silence that becomes song. It's waking up not to loneliness, but to the sacred presence that fills the room before you open your eyes. It's knowing that you are not waiting for love, you are walking in it. This is the paradox that confuses the world. That joy can live in solitude, that peace can bloom in quiet rooms, that fulfillment can exist without another name attached to yours. But this peace you carry, it cannot be bought, borrowed, or broken. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. John 14:27. Have you ever wondered why God trusted you with this kind of peace? Why you, of all people, were called to live this quiet strength while others seem to move in pairs? It's because your story isn't about dependence, it's about demonstration. You are meant to show what divine sufficiency looks like. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man that only God can fill." And you, woman of faith, have discovered what so many still search for, that the void is not meant to be occupied by people, but by presence, the divine presence. This kind of fullness is not loud. It doesn't need validation or visibility. It glows softly, like the flame of a candle that never burns out. You become light to others without even trying, a living psalm in motion. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalm 23:1. That's the declaration of a soul that has tasted divine satisfaction. From a psychological view, this is the highest form of consciousness integration, when you no longer seek wholeness outside yourself because you've found harmony within. Spiritually, it's divine union, heaven and earth meeting in your being, your solitude becoming sanctuary. You've probably felt it already, that quiet strength that rises in you after a long night of prayer, the peace that follows surrender, the smile that appears even when tears are still drying. That's what divine presence does. It doesn't remove the ache, it redeems it. Sometimes, when you wake in the middle of the night and realize you're alone again, you may still ask, will this be forever? Will there ever be someone to walk beside me? Or am I meant to walk this road alone with him? These are sacred questions, not signs of weakness, but proof of your humanity. God doesn't scold you for asking, he holds you as you wonder. And while the answer may not yet be clear, his peace remains constant. Because fullness is not the absence of longing, it's the presence of God within the longing. It's when the ache becomes prayer, and the prayer becomes communion. So tonight, when you lay your head down and feel that familiar silence around you, don't call it emptiness, call it intimacy. You are resting beside the one who never leaves, who fills the room, who fills you. This peace you carry, it's not fragile, it's not borrowed, it's eternal. It's the mark of a woman who found her completion not in another person, but in her Creator. And that, beloved, is the kind of fullness that changes the world. It's as if these women, the ones the world calls alone, have quietly built their homes in the sacred. They've learned to dwell in the stillness between prayers, to make peace with the empty chair beside them, to fill that space not with desperation, but with divinity. Even when their eyes are tired from waiting, even when their bodies ache for a human embrace, their souls remain alive, fierce, full, unwavering. There's a pulse in them that cannot be explained, a glow that refuses to dim. And yes, that bothers people more than they'll admit. Because when the world sees a woman who refuses to break under loneliness, who doesn't chase after crumbs of affection, who no longer begs to be chosen, it becomes uncomfortable. Her peace is confusing. Her restraint is threatening. Her fullness, unsettling. The truth is, the world doesn't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need it. It's easier to label her than to understand her. Easier to say she's proud, difficult, too independent, than to confront the truth that she simply will not settle for less than what God promised. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. Habakkuk 2-3. She is not hard to please, she is hard to fool. And you know that feeling, don't you? The looks, the whispers, the subtle pity in people's voices when they ask, still single, as though your life were a waiting room instead of a sanctuary? How many times have you smiled politely while the world implied that something was missing? But what they can't see, what only heaven knows, is that you're already overflowing. Overflowing with love that doesn't depend on another's presence to feel real. Overflowing with maturity carved through disappointment, with discernment sharpened in prayer, with faith that has walked through fire and survived. You overflow with patience not because waiting is easy, but because you've learned that divine timing never disappoints. You overflow with a self-love that was not born of vanity, but of victory, a love that cost you tears, prayers, nights of surrender, and mornings of renewal. And in that quiet overflow, God has made his dwelling place. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? 1 Corinthians 6:19. You have become his sanctuary, a walking altar, a vessel refined by solitude. Some think you're empty because you're alone, but they're blind to the truth. It was in that solitude that God taught you the deepest form of fullness, completeness in him. That's why your presence carries such weight. Why do rooms shift when you walk in? Why conversations grow quieter when your eyes meet theirs? Because you carry peace that doesn't waver. You don't compete, you don't chase, you don't perform, you just are. And that, in a world addicted to noise, is divine rebellion. Have you noticed how silence unnerves people? How stillness exposes what's frantic in them? That's what happens when your spirit is anchored in God. Your calm becomes conviction. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth to anyone because your Creator already defined it. You no longer perform for validation because heaven already applauds your existence. You've reached a sacred maturity, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't cling. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You've finally understood that divine love is not earned, it's inherited. It flows quietly, like a hidden spring in your chest, nourishing everything around you without you even realizing it. And that quiet strength unsettles those still searching for themselves in others. They call you cold because you no longer melt for temporary warmth. They call you proud because you refuse to kneel for attention. They call you hard because you've learned boundaries are holy. But you know better. You've been in the wilderness with God, and wilderness women don't need the world's approval to bloom. Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. The waiting didn't weaken you, it gave you wings. The solitude didn't shrink you, it stretched your spirit until you could hold heaven inside your chest. You've learned that not all companionship is connection, and not all attention is affection. That love is not a substitute for purpose, and that peace is not something you find, it's something you become. Have you realized how powerful that is? To walk into a world obsessed with performance and simply rest in authenticity. Artists have known this secret for centuries. The sculptor Auguste Rodin once said, "Nothing is a waste of time if you use the experience wisely." Your solitude has not been wasted, it has been sculpting you. Every season of silence has shaped the masterpiece that you are. Every unanswered prayer was God chiseling away the excess, revealing the form of a woman who knows who she is. Even science echoes this divine truth. In the stillness between sound waves lies resonance, the frequency where power gathers before release. You, too, are living in divine resonance. The quiet inside you isn't stagnation, it's sacred accumulation. When the time comes, your voice, your presence, your very existence will move with power because you waited in peace. And perhaps that's what intimidates others most, that you no longer move from lack but from overflow. You no longer seek to be chosen because you've already been called. You no longer hunger for belonging because you finally belong to purpose. So when they call you too much or too strong, smile gently. They're mistaking wholeness for hardness. What they can't yet see is that this strength was born in prayer, nurtured in silence, and crowned in surrender. You are not difficult, you are divine. You are not proud, you are prepared. You are not empty. You are entire. And one day, those who misunderstood your solitude will witness your unveiling, and they'll see that all along you were not waiting to be loved. You were learning to embody love itself. You simply are. And that is enough. You've become your own refuge, a temple not built by human hands but by divine encounter, sacred territory where heaven breathes through silence. And that's precisely why God protects you so fiercely, because He knows how much it costs you to reach this place, this sanctuary of fullness that no one fully understands but everyone can feel. You've paid for it in tears, in sleepless nights, in faith that refused to die when everything else fell apart. There are silences that scream, you know. The kind of silence that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening, just not in a language the world can hear. There are moments in life when words run out, when explanations feel heavy, and yet that's exactly where God moves most clearly. It's strange, isn't it? Because we were taught to associate God's presence with noise, with goosebumps, loud worship, miraculous signs, and quick answers. But the truth is, God often chooses whispers over thunder. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper, 1 Kings 19:12. His power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides inside the quiet. And that's where you come in. Because you've learned to live in that holy quiet. You've discovered the sacred art of stillness, the kind that listens deeper than words, the kind that sees with the eyes of the heart. How many times have you found yourself silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because you got tired of explaining your faith to those who cannot see what you see? You've learned that revelation doesn't need to be defended, it just needs to be lived. There were days when you could have argued, when you could have justified your choices or proved your faith, but instead you chose silence, not as retreat, but as reverence. Because you understood that some things can only be spoken between you and God. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Silence, for you, is not the absence of power, it's its purest form. While the world rushes, you pray. While everyone else scrambles for answers, you wait. Be still, and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. You've learned that waiting is not wasting, it's worship. Waiting doesn't mean inactivity, it means trust. It's saying with your life, I don't need to control this, because I know who does. And maybe that's what confuses people about you, your peace in the middle of uncertainty. They can't understand how you can stay so calm when nothing makes sense. But you know the secret. Chaos doesn't shake a soul that's rooted in God. You've walked through storms, and instead of being destroyed, you became the eye of the storm, the still point where heaven and earth meet. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. That's the paradox of divine strength, that stillness can sometimes roar louder than struggle. You don't shout your faith anymore. You embody it. Your silence has become a sermon, your waiting a form of worship. Have you realized that every sacred encounter in Scripture began with solitude? Moses met God in a desert. Elijah heard him in silence. Mary conceived his promise in a private moment of surrender. Maybe your solitude is not punishment, but invitation. Maybe this quiet is your burning bush, a place where eternity leans close and whispers your name. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Everything is gestation and then bringing forth. Your silence is that gestation. It's where divine ideas, healing, and purpose form beneath the surface, beyond sight." From a scientific view, silence itself has frequency measurable vibrations that calm the nervous system, align the heartbeat, and restore clarity to the brain. Even your biology recognizes what your spirit already knows. Stillness heals. And yes, there are nights when silence feels unbearable, when you long for a voice, a sign, a word. But even then, God is there, not absent, but hidden in the pause. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Psalm 23:2-3. He's restoring you in ways you can't yet see. Have you noticed that lately your prayers have changed? You don't talk to God the same way. The old prayers, the ones full of urgency and pleading, are slowly being replaced by quiet trust. Sometimes your only prayer is a sigh, and that's enough. Heaven hears sighs as symphonies. And though others may misinterpret your silence as indifference, it's actually intimacy. Because when you've been with God long enough, you realize you don't need to fill the space with words. You've learned the rhythm of divine conversation. Listen more, speak less, believe always. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Isaiah 30-15. That's the truth your life now sings without sound. There's something sacred about closing your bedroom door and kneeling in the dim light. No audience, no applause, just the whisper of your name echoing in eternity. That's the kind of worship that shakes heaven. That's the kind of faith that makes angels move. Because while others are searching for God in noise, you've found him in nuance, in the small, invisible moments where grace moves like breath. You've learned that divine intimacy doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just peace, quiet, holy peace that fills the room until the silence itself feels alive. And that's where you live now, between the seen and unseen, between waiting and fulfillment, between silence and revelation. You've made peace with the pause, because in that sacred stillness, you are not alone. You are being written to. It may seem like little, this quiet, unseen devotion, but in the spiritual world, it's gigantic, because God dwells in that silence. He doesn't just visit you there, he builds his home there. It's in silence that he searches you, examines the architecture of your soul, and begins to pour out discernment, wisdom, and invisible strength. While the world celebrates the loud, heaven crowns the still. There's a detail almost no one notices. When a woman chooses silence, God rises up for her. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Her quiet becomes his battleground. Her stillness becomes his stage. Every time she holds her peace instead of defending herself, God moves unseen on her behalf. It is in that sacred silence that he clothes her with new anointing garments of unseen glory that no eye can measure, but every spirit can feel. It's where he heals old wounds without exposing them, where he removes burdens that even she didn't know she was carrying. She doesn't need to shout her pain or announce her healing. Heaven already knows the details. On the outside, she continues living her routine, working, serving, smiling. But inside, a divine reconstruction is happening. Like a cathedral being rebuilt stone by stone, God is renewing her foundations. There's a sacred renovation underway, one that doesn't require noise or audience. And it's in this quiet sanctuary that the heart transforms. And a transformed heart, my friend, changes everything it touches. You'll see it first in the smallest things, in your tone, your patience, your choices. You'll notice your energy shifting, your atmosphere softening, your discernment sharpening. And this change doesn't come from self-help or motivational pep talks. It comes from within, from above. It is the work of the Spirit dwelling in the silence you've chosen. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30-15. This quietness is not emptiness, it's energy gathering. Like the still air before a great storm, like the breath before creation itself. And when the time is right, the power that was hidden in silence will erupt in miracles. But first, it must grow roots. Ruth understood that. Ruth, the woman whose silence spoke louder than declarations. If there was ever a soul who embodied the essence of sacred waiting, it was her. She didn't part the seas or call down fire. She carried something rarer, constancy. When her world collapsed, widowed, childless, with no promise of future, Ruth could have turned back. She could have returned to her homeland, to the familiar comfort of old patterns and predictable love. But she chose something harder. She chose a covenant. She chose faith over familiarity. She chose to stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Ruth 1:16. And that simple sentence shifted history. Have you ever realized how powerful one quiet decision can be? Ruth's stillness, her loyalty, her silent faithfulness in the mundane, all of it became the womb through which destiny was born. From her lineage came King David, and through David came Christ himself. The woman who chose silence became the ancestor of redemption. That's what God does with silent women. He turns their whispers into foundations. He takes what looks like waiting and uses it as weaving, stitching eternity through their faithfulness. In a world obsessed with performance, Ruth reminds us that destiny often begins in devotion, not display. And that's your story too. Because while others are chasing visibility, God is cultivating substance in you. When you kneel in your quiet room, when you pray words that no one will hear, when you cry silently into your pillow, that's the soil where God plants legacy. You think you're surviving, but you're sowing. Blessed are those who sow with tears, for they will reap with songs of joy. Psalm 126:5. Every tear that fell in solitude watered something sacred beneath the surface. You can't yet see the harvest, but heaven can. And when the appointed season comes, it will bloom so brightly that even those who doubted your silence will marvel. But for now, this season is still tender. The reconstruction continues. Have you noticed how your prayers are changing? They're not just requests anymore, they've become surrender. You no longer say, "Give me what I want," but rather, "Shape me for what you want." That's what divine maturity sounds like when longing transforms into alignment. And yes, it's hard. Transformation always is. It breaks what was false to reveal what's true. But like a potter at his wheel, God knows exactly how much pressure to apply. Yet, O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. Isaiah 64:8. It's interesting in neuroscience, when the brain enters silence, its default mode network activates. That's when creativity, healing, and memory integration happen most intensely. Science now confirms what the spirit always knew. Silence is not inactivity, it's sacred processing. It's where the unseen parts of you are being rewired for purpose. So yes, your quiet life may not look spectacular, but in the spiritual realm, it's radiant. While others are seen, you are sensed. You carry an atmosphere that can't be taught, only transmitted. And that's why the enemy hates your silence, because he can't manipulate what he can't measure. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Habakkuk 2:20. Your silence is not absence, it's the audience. Heaven listens when you whisper. Angels move when you rest. And one day, you'll realize that what you thought was isolation was actually initiation. God preparing you not for visibility, but for vibration, the resonance of divine purpose through your being. So, stay faithful in your quiet place. Keep your sacred rhythm of prayer, your nightly conversations with God, your whispered surrender, because what he's building in you will soon speak for itself. Ruth didn't have to announce her destiny. She just kept gleaning in the fields, and destiny found her there. You won't need to chase what's yours either. What's ordained will recognize you when you arrive. And at that moment, without even realizing it, Ruth sealed a promise. A single sentence spoken from loyalty became a covenant that altered eternity. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1:16. She wasn't just choosing Naomi, she was choosing destiny. And that's why this story matters to you. Because perhaps right now, you are standing in that same sacred uncertainty, not knowing what comes next, without guarantees, without immediate relief, but firm in faith. Firm in the quiet conviction that you're following what God placed in your heart. That kind of firmness, silent, steady, unseen, moves heaven. You may not hear the thunder, but the spiritual realm shifts when a woman decides to stay faithful in the in-between. Ruth didn't chase Boaz. She didn't beg for approval or compete for attention. She lived with honor, loyalty, and truth, and heaven wrote her name into lineage. And in due time, God moved everything. He aligned the right people, opened doors she didn't even know existed, and positioned her for a destiny she could never have orchestrated on her own. What the world saw as a poor widow, God saw as a cornerstone. He took a woman gathering leftovers in a field and made her part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118-22. Do you realize the weight of that? God rewrote history with a woman who walked quietly through fields of barley, a woman who kept her faith intact when everything else was stripped away. And that's what He's doing with you. Because God doesn't choose the most visible, the most celebrated, the most followed. He chooses those who remain, the ones who honor in secret, the ones who stay steady when everything feels still, the ones who walk through empty fields whispering, "I will not give up." Well, you who keep moving quietly through your own fields, perhaps tired, perhaps unseen, are exactly the kind of soul God uses to make history. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. 2 Chronicles 16-9. You don't have to force anything. The promise has already been written in eternal ink. Like Ruth, you will reap where you have not sown, because God saw where no one else saw, and He always rewards those who persevere. Have you ever considered that even in your silence, even without a title or a stage, you are already being used by God? So many imagine that divine calling means standing on a platform, performing miracles, or speaking to crowds. But heaven doesn't measure purpose by spotlight, it measures it by surrender. God uses the available, not the loud. He moves through humble hands and quiet hearts. Maybe it was that one word of advice you gave without realizing how perfectly timed it was. Or that moment when your calm presence shifted the atmosphere of a room. Maybe it was a message you sent that made someone cry and whisper, "That's exactly what I needed to hear." That wasn't a coincidence. That was calling. When you enter a place and peace follows, that's not personality, that's presence. The light within you speaks, even when you say nothing. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. People are being healed by your existence. Some are strengthened by the way you endure. Others find courage because you're still standing. They look at you, the woman who still prays, still hopes, still loves, and something in them whispers, "If she can keep believing, so can I." You are a channel, even when you feel fragile, even when you doubt your own impact, even when you look in the mirror and ask yourself, "Am I really making a difference?" Yes, you are. In more ways than you'll ever know. God doesn't require perfection, only sincerity. He's not waiting for you to be flawless. He's waiting for you to be faithful, to keep showing up, to keep praying even when you're tired, to keep loving even when the world feels cold. Your way of loving is healing. Your empathy is ministry. Your ability to listen deeply is intercession. Your silence in moments of conflict is spiritual warfare. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Matthew 5-9. When you pray for someone in secret, heaven records it. When you forgive without applause, you disarm the enemy. When you choose not to retaliate, you demonstrate divine strength. You've been used, yes, discreetly, but powerfully. God didn't hide you to forget you. He hid you to refine you. Because precious instruments aren't left on display, you are rare. And He knows that rare things require careful protection. Have you ever watched an artist sculpting marble? From a distance, it looks violent, rough blows, fragments falling, dust rising. But to the sculptor, every strike is deliberate, every fragment removed with intention. Michelangelo once said that his task wasn't to create the statue, but to free it to remove everything that wasn't the figure hidden inside. That's what God is doing with you. You may feel those hammer strikes, rejection, disappointment, loss, but they're not destruction. They're definitions. He's freeing the masterpiece within you. Every delay, every no, every season of silence is a chisel in His hand. And while the world only sees dust, Heaven sees destiny. There's even science behind this sacred process. In metallurgy, gold is purified by fire, not destroyed but refined. Impurities rise to the surface only to be removed, revealing brilliance that was always there. That's what your trials are doing. They're not diminishing you. They're revealing the purity of your calling. So don't mistake the waiting for wasting. Don't confuse silence with stagnation. Every moment you've spent walking faithfully, unseen, has been preparation. While you think you're being forgotten, people are being impacted just by watching you endure. Even without words, your life is preaching the sermon of resilience, of trust, of quiet surrender. You are the woman whose story says, "I kept believing when no one clapped. I stayed faithful when no one saw. I kept walking when I couldn't see the path. And heaven took notice. For God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him." Hebrews 6:10. You are not behind, you are being built. And one day soon, the woman who walked through the fields alone, who prayed in the dark, who loved without being loved back, who waited without answers, will stand as living proof that God never wastes obedience. The masterpiece is emerging. The sculptor has not stopped. The silence was never empty. It was the sound of heaven working on your behalf. And maybe now, as this message draws to a close, you're realizing something sacred, that being alone was never a punishment. It was preparation. Every quiet night, every unanswered question, every prayer whispered into the dark was part of a divine conversation that shaped you into who you are now. The world may still not understand the power of a woman who sleeps alone, but heaven does. Heaven sees the tears that never made it past your pillow. Heaven counts the prayers you never shared aloud. Heaven witnessed the days you stood when everything tried to break you, and that's why heaven calls you chosen. You are not behind, you are not forgotten, you are being positioned. The story that began in silence is now ready to speak through you. And when it does, it will not be through noise, but through evidence. Your peace will speak, your faith will echo, your strength will testify. God is about to reveal what he has been building all along. Like Ruth, you will look back one day and realize that every lonely field, every quiet morning, every moment of surrender was a setup for divine fulfillment. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. So tonight, rest in that truth. Let go of the weight of when and how. You don't need to chase, you don't need to prove, you don't need to hurry. What belongs to you is already finding its way. The Lord will perfect that which concerns you. Psalm 138:8. If this message has touched your spirit, take a moment to share it with someone who might need to hear it, someone who's walking through their own quiet night. Let them know they're not alone in the waiting. And if you felt something stir in your heart today, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what part of this message resonated most with your soul. If you'd like to be part of this growing community of faith, purpose, and awakening, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. When you do, you're not just supporting content, you're joining a movement of souls who are choosing depth over noise, presence over performance, and faith over fear. And to everyone who supports this work, whether through super thanks, prayer, or simply by being here, thank you. Your presence, your engagement, your time, it all matters. You are helping to build a space where light, faith, and truth can breathe again. Now, as you leave this moment and step back into your world, carry this truth with you. The silence that once felt empty is now your sanctuary. You are walking with divine rhythm. You are surrounded by favor. You are seen, known, and deeply loved. May peace crown your nights and strength greet your mornings. May your heart remain open, your faith remain steady, and your spirit remain sensitive to the quiet voice of God that speaks between the heartbeats of your day. And as you sleep tonight, may the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps watch over you, blessing your rest, renewing your soul, and preparing you for the promise that's already unfolding. You are chosen, you are whole, you are home.